Hey guys, welcome to the Kick the Sick series. So we're gonna do part one. I thought I would break this up just so we can keep the videos kind of shorter and keep on topic with just certain things. So a couple things that I wanted to mention before we get started is that the series really is to help us break the sick cycle that we're on. Because it really is. It's like this kind of a snowball all the time of sickness for a lot of people. They get better, they get sick, they get better, they get sick constantly. And so that is one of the things, one of the reasons why we're doing this is to really break that cycle of sickness. But the other thing too is to give you guys a different perspective on health and sickness. We really want to discuss why the body is doing what it's doing so that we can make better decisions, or not necessarily better decisions, but that when we make the decisions, we have all the information and we're not making decisions based on fear, because so often when we don't have all the information, we do let fear get the best of us and we make rash decisions and whatnot. And sometimes looking back on those, we're like, if only I had known, or if I knew now, or if I knew then what I know now, I wouldn't have done this or that. So that's really the purpose of doing this series, is to give more information and maybe a different perspective. Maybe you agree with some of it, maybe you don't. Maybe you can take little nuggets from each of the videos. And that's what it's all about. So the first part of our series, you guys, we're going to give a general overview. I'm not going to go into specific symptoms like cough, fever, things like that. General overview of the immune system and really why we're seeing kids get sick. And this is probably going to be something that you don't hear all the time as to why kids are getting sick. So today, really specifically, like why kids get sick, it's really based on like this series of 3 things that often happen. So I'm going to go into those. Typically we see this when people are in our office and we're talking about kids who are always sick, or any kid at all. You'll realize, those who have been in the office, right, we go really in depth into that kid's history, especially into the mom's pregnancy, and we go in depth into labor and delivery, because all of these things stack up. And so they're all little pieces to the puzzle, I often will say, to give us a whole view of like what is going on with their health. So the number one thing, you guys, is that we typically will see with these kids who are always sick is that there's too much stress early on in life. And so a lot of people will say, well, these kids are really little, they don't have a lot of stress. Well, it's not just like, oh, they were born a month ago, because they've been developing for 9 months prior to that. And so stress in pregnancy, you guys, how labor and delivery went down, like that's a huge stress. Birth is always stressful. It's always there's always trauma involved, whether it's C-section, vaginal, it doesn't matter. There is stress that's always involved. So we always go into that, growth spurts, and any just early childhood stress. So a lot of times what we'll see, like I said, is too much stress early in life. And with all that stress, you guys, it causes the sympathetic nervous system, that fight or flight, to go into overdrive. So that's kind of the second part of that series, is that they have too much stress, and then that sympathetic, that fight or flight, gets totally stuck on. It's in so much overdrive. And then the third step is usually, then they get sick. How are they handling that sickness? So the kid that's stuck in that sympathetic overdrive, you guys, does not respond well to things like teething and colds, ear infections, whatever the diagnosis in a sense might be. They don't respond well. So it's those 3 things that we're looking for when we're doing a lot of these histories and whatnot. Do they have tongue and lip ties? That's a huge thing that we talk about in our office anymore, because we know that there's some stress to that dura. So here's the thing. If the child is in sympathetic overdrive for a really long time, you guys, they get stuck, and the body does not get rid of things like the bacteria, the viruses, the infections. And so I loved when I heard it explained this way, because I thought it just gave me a really good visual. But what we have learned is that the body, that child, becomes chronically constipated with illness, inflammation, congestion. This is a huge one that we hear all the time in the office. Like, they've always been congested, like since birth. So they're already chronically constipated with illness, inflammation, and congestion. when they're in that sympathetic overdrive, and that can be from pregnancy, from labor and delivery, that kind of stuff. So if we're constantly putting a Band-Aid on those things, you guys, and we're not allowing the body to express it, if we're constantly suppressing it, they will become chronically ill more so. They're the ones who are like, well, we got them better and now they're sick. Well, they were healthy for like a week and now they're sick again. They were good for a little bit and now they're sick again. They're just, this vicious cycle of sickness. And a lot of times that is because they were never able to get rid of it in the first place. You guys get to see my cat in the background. But basically we're constantly we're patching it up instead of taking care of the issue. And so one of the ways that I was explained with that, or was taught the immune system really, is that it is our military, right? It's our defense, it's our army. And so if that nervous system is in fight or flight for so long and then the symptoms are constantly being suppressed, it is going to take a longer time for them to get better, right? It's going to take a longer time for them to respond accordingly. A lot of times what we will see is kids who start care, one mom in particular was like, oh my gosh, like she couldn't get him to wind down at night once we started care because he's like getting rid of everything, right? But all of a sudden they're responding how we want them to. Things are kicking in. All of a sudden everything is draining. You know, if they've been congested for a long time, we'll see that everything starts to drain. So it's just kind of the opposite. That's not a bad thing, you guys. Finally, they're acting in a sense like they should, and the body's having a response. That immune system is being totally woken up in a sense. And so if we look at it like the military, like it's our army, you know, we celebrate in our house, and I've talked about this several times, we celebrate those colds, those coughs, those like teething and getting through that, because that is basic training, you guys. You don't send your army, your military off to war without going through basic training, right? And the teething that's basic training for your immune system. It teaches them how to handle a crisis. And if we're constantly suppressing those symptoms all the time, they never fully learn how to adapt and how to address those things. And so in order for us to break that cycle, you guys, first of all, we need to get those kids out of that fight or flight, right? That was one of the first things in our series, is the stress, and then they get that sympathetic overdrive. So one of the things that we do in our office is we're adjusting parasympathetics, rest and digest. We need to get them off that sympathetic overdrive. But also, so that's with the chiropractic adjustment, but then also we need to allow that body to express its healing ability. The body is able to heal on its own. Oftentimes it needs just no interference. That's where chiropractic comes in, so that the body can heal to its potential. And so for these kids, we want to let them express that healing ability and not constantly suppress it, so that they're not getting chronically constipated with the illness, the inflammation, and the congestion. So on part 2, you guys, we're gonna go more in depth into specifics, whether it's coughs, fevers, things like that. But for now, make sure you remember, like, these are the 3 things, you know, they're gonna, too much stress, sympathetic overdrive, and then they can't handle those sicknesses. So hope you guys learned something. We'll continue this series next time with part 2. So take care, bye.